So CBS News host Margaret Brennan hit Bernie Sanders with, honestly, what she thought was a got you question. But his response was just spot on. I have to show you this.
President Trump could look at that and say, Bernie Sanders has been in Washington since 1991. If he was going to change, if he had the ability to make the changes he's promising, he would have done something by now. How do you respond to that?
Well, I respond in two ways. I mean, we have a pretty good record of accomplishment. And second of all, I am one out of 100 members of the United States Senate, and Trump is the president. For example, I led the effort to get the United States out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which is the worst humanitarian disaster on the face of the earth. It is horrific. Hundreds of thousands of people will die this year if we don't stop that war. I led the effort in the Senate. It passed. Colleagues led it in the House. It passed. Trump vetoed that legislation. I led the effort to stop Trump from throwing 32 million people off of the health care that they currently have by defending the ACA. And by one vote, we managed to stop Trump. So, you know, Trump can say what he wants, but I think most people know, among other things, that Trump lies a whole lot of times.
So you don't see that, what you're describing is activism, a consistency of ideology. But is there one thing you would point to say, this is my chief legislative achievement?
Well, yeah. I mean, as part of the ACA, we, along with Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, we put $12 billion over a 5-year period into community health centers, which are now providing 9 million more Americans with not only primary health care, but with dental care, low-cost prescription drugs, and mental health counseling. So getting 9 million more people access to health care is no small thing. I wrote, along with John McCain, a major piece of veterans legislation. Turned out not to be all that I wanted, but it put $5 billion into the Veterans Administration to make sure that our veterans get the quality health care that they deserve. My amendment exposed the fact that as part of the Dodd-Frank legislation, that Wall Street received not only $700 billion bailout from the taxpayers, but some $14 trillion in low-interest loans from the Fed. $14 trillion. The public would not have known that without my amendment.
That would have been a gotcha question for 90% of politicians in Washington, D.C. But Bernie was like, what an easy question. What's your one signature legislative policy achievement? Well, you ask me about one. What if I give you maybe 4 or 5? How would you like that? There was this one bill I signed. It was a great bill. It was with Congressman Jim Clyburn. It got more people healthcare, 9 million more people. There was a great veterans bill I signed. There was, and by the way, they call Bernie Sanders the Amendment King because he was so successful in getting important amendments added to pieces of legislation. And of course, the amendments were wonderful and they helped many people because they're Bernie Sanders amendments and he actually gives a shit. So, yes, he has legislative accomplishments on their own, by the way, as well. He also is the Amendment King, and then most importantly, and this is the thing that's most convincing to me, he got Disney workers a raise. He got, I think, over 300,000 Amazon workers a living wage. And the point on Yemen is super important. He was able, along with Ro Khanna and Mike Lee, to get it passed to stop our support for the genocide in Yemen being carried out by Saudi Arabia. Now, Trump vetoed that, but I mean, I dare Trump. Go ahead. Question Bernie on what he's achieved. And oh my God, he will absolutely railroad you. So this is quintessential Bernie, man. He is asked about a policy question and she thinks it's a gotcha. And he's just like, step aside. Here I go. Because this is the stuff that he lives for. This is what he loves. He loves the policy stuff. And remember, they always say, oh, you need centrists because only centrists get things done because centrists can work across the aisle. When, again, Bernie proves the opposite. It was Bernie and Ro Khanna that got, with the Stop Bezos Act, they got over 300,000 people a living wage. They're the left. They're the only people who can actually get stuff done. And by the way, they don't have to sell out their values in order to get stuff done. there's enough areas of actual crossover with some factions of the right. Like you guys hear me say all the time, on some non-interventionist, anti-war stuff, you're going to get some paleo-conservative support. You're going to get some libertarian support. Work together on those issues. Work together on those issues. Criminal justice reform, you're going to have crossover with some people on the right of, hey, let's reduce the prison population, let's decriminalize or legalize marijuana. Okay, you can work across the aisle when it coincides with your principles and your ideology and your values and your policy beliefs. What the establishment wants to do is reach across the aisle and work in a bipartisan fashion only when it benefits the right-wing position or the corporatist position. So what's the most recent example of them working together? Wall Street deregulation, when Joe Manchin and a bunch of corporate Democrats reached across the aisle and worked with Republicans. That's the exact kind of bipartisanship and compromise we don't need. Bernie and Ro Khanna, on the other hand, get stuff done that's positive. It's good for people. Love this stuff, man. Go ahead. Anytime you throw a policy question to Bernie and you think it's a gotcha, you got another thing coming.